this series of video tutorials on the World Domination Custom Cabinetry app. This app is a Notion template that you can download and use for your own company. You will rename it. Let's look right here where we see the name of the app. WDCC stands for World Domination Custom Cabinetry app, and we will jump over to our actual company, and you'll see here that this cabinet maker has renamed it with his company's name, so Kingdom version 4, and then Kingdom External, Kingdom Internal, and Kingdom Admin. So just so you know, that's kind of step one when you get it, is to just rename this, from World Domination Custom Cabinetry app to your company's name. So there's not a lot to know about the rooms other than using rooms is the best strategy for smaller batches and transfer batches, providing you the opportunity to schedule the production and installation of your various rooms of your project over a period of days, weeks, or months as needed. If your typical annual sales are, say, $1 million for a nice round number, then you are looking for monthly sales of just over $83,000, weekly sales of just a hair above $19,000, and daily sales of almost $4,000. Using the delivery schedule to build out our weeks becomes a whole lot easier if you are dealing with smaller numbers of cabinets and batch costs. In the absence of this, it is easy to treat all projects the same way, making monster projects very painful on cash flow. One big batch could mean you can't really bill until everything is complete, not a specific portion of the project. And if you're not billing weekly or monthly, you will not be getting paid weekly or monthly. Rooms also is another reason that the World Domination Custom Cabinetry app is a perfect companion for the Custom Cabinet Estimator. This is where we enter our per room cost from Custom Cabinet Estimator. We enter the delivery cost in projects, as we saw in our last course, and this will distribute your delivery cost between all the rooms appropriately, so you can use this app to determine your progress invoice amounts. So right now we're on the rooms page, and we are at an active table view. So these are the projects that are active, these are the projects that are archived, and then these are all the projects. So you can see the one item that was checked off is showing here on this one. We only see the one that was checked in the archived field here, and then we only see the ones that have not been archived here. But here on this page, we have some typical data about this job, the name, what project it's linked to, what the project status is. So this is the building that the cabinetry is going to go into. What is the status of that building, commercial building, whatever it is. And then the room name, a little bit redundant because we always try to include both the project name and the room name in our room name. So we have a project name, and then when we create a room, we try to include that project name and the room name. And so this is a little bit redundant, but there's a few places that it's helpful to go ahead and utilize this field. And then rooms status. The room status, this is the project, this is the room itself. Where is it at in our sequence of events? In this case, these first few are in the assembly area. Then there's one in hardware, one in installation, one that's completed, and one that's also in installation. Then we have who's responsible for the design and sales of the project, and then who's responsible for the project currently. Whose court is it in? And then a link to to-dos. And then a proposed delivery date. We do not use this date for our calendar. This date is kind of a breadcrumb trail of when did the builder, homeowner, architect, whoever determines when the cabinets needs to be delivered. When did they say they needed to be delivered? And then we actually change this. We make this the same date initially, but when we actually install or deliver the cabinets, we change this to the actual delivery date so that we get some math on that, and we can kind of track good customers versus bad customers. If one customer is constantly delaying their projects, we might want to kind of cull them from our customer list. Then if we slide over here to the right some more, this is saying that there is a cause for that delay. So we would have a delayed days and then the cause for the delay. And inside of here, once you do have a delay, you would come in here and say, was it caused by us, our company? Was it caused by the owner of the project? Was it caused by other subcontractors? Was it caused by the builder or the remodeler? Or was it a weather delay? Just something to say why the proposed delivery date and the actual delivery date were different. Then we have just a little more basic information. We early on kind of estimate the cabinet quantity based on pictures, images, blueprints, something to get that ballpark estimate. So we have that field available to look at. And here we're just looking at it as a comparison. What was the actual cabinet quantity? And you see here we have a little bit of variations on a couple of these. And then the room linear footage. This comes out of Custom Cabinet Estimator. We're getting this information information from Custom Cabinet Estimator. We're getting this information from Custom Cabinet Estimator. And then the actual room price, again, comes from Custom Cabinet Estimator. So when we're looking at the estimate, we have a cost per room. We enter that here. Now, this field here is a calculation field. Anytime you see that sum character in front of it, that just means it's a calculation field. And it's taking this delivery cost from the project and converting it so we can use it. And then here we're saying the actual room price based on Custom Cabinet Estimator was $13,686.28, but when we add the delivery cost for the project, this room becomes this. So this is the actual invoice price, what we would invoice the customer for this room, as opposed to being just the room price. So it helps distribute that delivery cost into the room price for an invoice. And then we have a cost per cabinet, again, just kind of an aggregate number that's nice to know. We also would use that cost per cabinet as where we would find the number we want to use next year for our ballpark estimates. And so here's where we could do that deal where we come in here and say, I want to see the minimum, what was the least expensive per cabinet. So we see $695.74, but we would probably go say, okay, well, that's that number there. The next lowest one is this one, so we'll probably use that as our low number. Then we can come in here and say which one. If you have a whole bunch of numbers, this is a little harder to do than what I'm doing here with just these few numbers. Then you could say what was the max number, and we see here that it's this 1,546, so we would probably want to use this 1,399 because this is probably something weird. And then we keep this set to normally average. And so we know, based on what we've done so far this year, and of course we would be looking back at this next year to see what this is, for every job we've done through the whole year, that our average cost per cabinet, and again, this is not the cabinet cost itself, it's the whole job cost divided by the cabinet quantity, is $1,017.56. So that's good information to know. Rooms is also where you'll find the two most valuable tools that this app can provide. So we have multiple views here, and we can see those views here if we open this up. So you can see here I'm on rooms, and then I can click that triangle to the left of it and I see all the views. I also see those same views across the top here. The only advantage to this list of views is you will see all of them all the time. This list of views, if it gets long enough as it has here, there's one more that we have to click that to get to that last view, this one right here. So I do find on rooms that I usually use this navigation over here rather than this up here. But the two most valuable pieces of this would definitely be this production schedule and this delivery schedule. So let's talk about those first, and then we'll talk about some of these others a little bit later. So the production schedule is a Kanban board. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So here is our production schedule, and this particular version doesn't have a lot of jobs in it because it's just a sample version, so there's nothing in all of these areas that represent our sequence of events. But these are color-coded intentionally, and we'll kind of understand that as we go. So we have this very first step is always to give somebody a ballpark estimate to qualify them. Once they've said, yes, we can afford your cabinets and we can wait on your cabinets, then we're going to get their selections from them. Then we're going to give them an estimate. Then we're going to go out and field measure their project. Then we're going to design their cabinetry. Then they're going to take those drawings from designing those cabinetry and go out and double check the field measurements. Then once we've double checked the field measurements, we will provide them with a proposal, and then we will engineer their project. And so the engineering for an outsourced guy would be different than the engineering for a guy that's doing everything in-house. So one guy in the engineering portion would be getting the job all engineered so that everything works, no drawers crash into dishwashers or ovens, or corners clear, everything. But one would be ordering raw materials in at this material acquisition stage. The other would be ordering in cabinet components, doors, cabinet parts, all of those type things, door boxes. So the names don't change, but there is one piece of this for some outsourced guys that they don't do any of this machining. So they could actually take this one, you can click on those three dots, and you could hide that field and not show that for the guys that don't do any machining. Then we would have this finish area, and then we would have this assembly process. So finish process, assembly process, hardware process, delivery, and installation. One of the things I want to point out here is these dollar amounts here. So it's kind of a combination of quantity and dollar amounts. Wherever you find that you have a lot of dollar amounts sitting is a good indication. Now, this version only has a few jobs in it, so it's not a good indication of this. But this could reveal your constraint or weakest link. When you see a high dollar amount, it means either this assembly is your constraint or the item after it is your constraint. And a lot of times it would be the item after it. So things are backing up here because this is the slowest process. So dollars and quantities, you got to kind of weight it between the two. This room has a lot of dollars in it, this one room, where these other rooms do not have as many dollars in them. So they're peripheral rooms, but there's a lot more of them. But it is a really good indicator when you start seeing a high dollar amount in any one of these columns that either the column itself is your constraint or the column after it is your constraint. And that's a really valuable thing to know. But also you have this visibility into your production processes, and this comes through the rooms. And it's also the trigger that tells your team members when to work on the job. So if I were the finish guy and this room was in the finish department, when I move it from finish to assembly, that's telling the guy in the assembly department, and you could even put somebody's name after each of these. You could put finish, Jim, assembly, Joe, hardware, Sally. If you wanted to, you could actually include that in those names. Another way of doing that is to utilize our assignee field, and that's probably what I would do. So we see here we have a field. Anytime you see a field that has these two human head kind of icons in front of them, that means it's utilizing the people that have been invited into the project. So you would invite all your employees in, and then when you click on this, you'll see all the people you've invited in, and you could assign it to this person. So you could say, okay, now you're responsible for that. And they'll get a notification telling them that something has changed about Radius 17B Laundry. When they click on that email that says something has changed, or even the notification, either one will bring them to this card and say, okay, this is in your field of application. This is part of your job description. You need to start working on this job now. It activates. It's the trigger that tells them you're supposed to start assembling this room of cabinetry now, or tells them you're supposed to be hardwaring this project now. I feel like, and this can be a push or pull system, I think that the person that finishes assembling these cabinets should move this card into hardware, telling the guy in the hardware department that now the ball's in your court. I don't think the guy in the hardware department should look to see if it's complete and drag it out. So whoever is doing it should push it to the next person, telling them it's ready. Doesn't mean he's going to activate yet. It just means that it's ready for him to start working on it. And again, when you see them stacked up, maybe you know where to direct your team in the morning meetings. In a morning meeting, you could say, hey, let's all kind of jump into assembly today and get them caught up, and then go to your respective areas and do what you've got to do. It's a really good indicator, this visual of we got a lot of work in the assembly area, so we need to kind of put some extra effort there today, focus our attention there. So this production schedule is a board view. This is a Kanban view. You can slide these things to make the change. So I'll show you one more thing here. I slid this a minute ago. I took this item here and I slid it over to finish, and now it is living in finish. If I wanted to move it back to assembly, I could slide it back, but I could also go to this room status and say it's no longer in finish, it's in assembly, and that will move it as well. When we click out of it, we'll see that it's back in assembly. So you can move it either of those two ways. Obviously, the visual way of sliding it makes the most sense in this thing. Easiest for your guys on a tablet or a phone to do, and they could know what's coming their way. The guys over here in delivery and installation and hardware know that we got all of this work coming their way. Just a great visualization of what's going on in your company. The second most valuable tool in the rooms would definitely be the delivery schedule. And this is how I managed my company for years and years and years. Again, we don't have a ton of deliveries in here because we only have a few sample companies, but the day you're on will always be in red in this calendar view. If you are off in some other month and you want to jump to today, you can just click on today. So you can back up a month, go forward a month, or jump to today. And so that will bring you right to the current day. And so this coming week, we're going to need to install these cabinetry on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then the following week, and that is 21 cabinets. That sounds right to me, about 8 cabinets a day. And then on the 14th, we're going to install 2, 5, 8, 9 cabinets. So that's, and as long as they're bathroom cabinets, laundry cabinets, not a lot of crown mold, not a lot of trim. There's not a kitchen. We can certainly go up to 10 or 12 cabinets a day. And then on the 21st, we're going to install these 14 cabinets for this kitchen. And so that is more than one day's work, especially when you consider crown mold, light rail, and all the things that go with a kitchen that you don't see in bathrooms. So we're going to span that over 2 days. Now, it wouldn't be a full 2 days, but it would be a day and some portion of a day. So the way we set this span is just simply in this actual delivery date. Anytime we're on this date, we have this radio button right here that allows us to put in an end date. So in the absence of that, we just have this one date, And then when we choose that, we get that second date, so we can say, okay, I'm going to start on the 21st and I'm going to finish on the 22nd, and that'll give you that span. Some people actually use this calendar to span the whole production cycle, so they'll have a beginning date of when they're going to start manufacturing it. And so this beginning date here, and you would need to change some wording here, but you could certainly do that. And so this beginning date would be the day you plan on starting to machine it, and the end date would be the day you plan to finish installing it. I kind of just like the delivery thing. I can kind of count back to everything else. And so we utilize this methodology within our own companies in the past. So let's also review quickly. We saw this in our last course, that we have some information on these cards. Now, this is not all the fields. It's just a small selection of the fields. But we have the job name. We have the project status. What status this house is being trimmed right now. Whatever the building is, whether it's a residential or commercial building, it is at the trim stage. So obviously we certainly should be able to put cabinetry in. And then the room, this is the laundry room, this is the guest bath, this is the master bath, this is the powder room. And then we have the room status. So in this case, we're not to this assembly yet, and this is telling us this is good. We're at assembly, so we're here, and we're planning on installing this here. So assembly is green, saying if it's that far along. But if this was back at Ballpark Estimate, we would have a red button here saying, hey, you're not far enough along to be able to install this. And so these color-coded room statuses are helpful in that sense. Is the house ready for the cabinetry, and are the cabinets far enough along for us to be able to do what we need to do? So we have these indicators. And then we have an estimated cabinet quantity. The only reason we show the estimated cabinet quantity is we can't fill this actual cabinet quantity in until we've actually got a formal proposal. And so we need something to give us a clue if we're looking at this, if we're scrolling way down into the future and we're not far enough along to have an actual cabinet quantity. Having an estimated cabinet quantity would kind of tell us, is this a 1-day install, 2-day install, 3-day install, that kind of thing, by having some sort of cabinet quantity. And then we have the room price, and the room price is also to let us weight that cabinet quantity. Just because I've only got 3 cabinets, if that 3 cabinets cost $30,000, I know I'm not going to install that in my typical hour per cabinet kind of thing. So we want to have both of those numbers to represent our ideal, say, $20,000 week, or our ideal 8 cabinets a day, whatever number works for you and your company and the size of your company. So then let's take a look at these other helpful views. So we'll come back over here to our views. We were looking at the active table view early on, then we looked at the archived and all the same data, just looking at it of jobs that are either archived or not. So then we have ballpark estimates. Now the ballpark estimate is done at the project level, but if we want to look at all the ballpark estimates rather than just a ballpark estimate, we can come here real quick and see all of our ballpark estimates. Maybe as a quick daily reminder of, is there something I need to follow up on here to try to get this job from a ballpark estimate into our system to sell the job. And in our selections database, again, we would do this at the project level. We saw the selections when we were looking at the project. You know, what's the interior material, what's the exterior material, what's the edge band that we're going to use. All of this goes into Custom Cabinet Estimator, but we need to collect it. Instead of collecting it on a paper form, we're going to collect it here. And these are just real easy. If you need to add another item, you just type it in. If I started typing in test item, it gives me the option to create that item. And so I would say create. And then the very first thing I would do is I want everything that is a choice, something that they have chosen, to be green. So I have that red indicator saying you still need this. And then I would usually slide this into alphabetical order. Well, we see that it actually is if I leave that there. And so I want to make it green. I want to put it in alphabetical order and only have need selection as red. When you start a new project, every field will say need selection. So you have this big red screen. And this is not a good example because normally we would come here and we would see a lot of that. And let's get a decent view of that by popping into this other account. And if we come to the selections page of this one, we'll see some red and a lot of green. And so this is something that needs to be followed up on. We need to get this answer about this edge band for this particular project. And then usually we'll see some moldings or pulls and knobs are probably the most frequent. These pulls and knobs, trying to get that last information. But you have this just big overall picture. These are all the projects that we have that are active. They're either pending or are in production, and we need to get these answers. And so this is just a great view to be able to come in here and say, I need to get this information. And it's also sorted by delivery date. So the jobs that are the furthest away from you are down here at the bottom, the ones you're not going to be doing for a while. So you know that you can ignore some red down here, but you really need to be focusing on any red up here. So that selections is just a big broad view rather than just this particular project. This is all the projects, and it is sorted kind of by project. All the projects are grouped together. You can sort it all different ways. You have this filter and sort to do all kinds of things with this. And then material acquisition. This is a valuable one as well. So this is how some people keep up with whether they've ordered the wood or they've ordered the component parts or whatever it is they order. So this would be the interior materials, either ordering the sheet goods or ordering the parts from a company like Cabinage. This is the exterior materials. Maybe we're ordering these doors from Conestoga, or maybe we're ordering wood to build these doors. And if we've ordered them from an outsourced guy, we can check off and say they're here. Just this big overall dashboard view of what have I ordered, what do I need to order, and what has arrived. And so here's edge band, the door model, have we ordered the doors, that kind of thing. Have we ordered the drawer boxes? Have we ordered the door fronts? Have we ordered the stain and paint, all that stuff? And so these give you that big overall view of what needs to be ordered, what has been ordered, and what's arrived. And then production schedules, what we already talked about. Delivery schedule we already talked about. And then we have one more delivery schedule that we have not found to be all that useful. This is called a timeline view. If I click on today, it will represent today, but we don't have anything that's actually in this one anyway that has those questions answered. In this one, I think we do. We've actually done a decent job here. So we can actually see, because here's today, so these are already installed, and then these are set to deliver here. These are the same jobs we saw, but kind of staggered out in this timeline view. Until they give us dependent events, I don't find this all that valuable, so you can kind of ignore this until I say, hey, we're going to start utilizing that. Well, that's it for this video tutorial. Up next, we will look at the data page that includes the images, ballpark rates, elicitations, and appliance databases. Thanks for watching.